Hi, in this video we will go through different options that we have in Microsoft .NET Framework to develop services. In fact, to develop contract first services. When we talk about SOA or developing services, we usually have two approaches to develop services. One is top to bottom and other is bottom to top. Top to bottom is where we first start with our service interface, service contract, the methods and the types that we will be exposing over services. In a way, we start from top, like this will be our service, it will have these methods and these types and these parameters. That approach is called contract first. In that, we usually develop our visual document and XSD types, or in .NET area, people might say, okay, if you don't develop Visual or XSD, you can start developing interfaces, the .NET contracts, which are interfaces and data types in CLR, and then you can continue developing your business layer and data access layer and all the other layers that are relevant. But basically, in this approach, in contracts first approach, we usually start from the contracts. Either you will develop Visual or XSD, or you will start from .NET contracts and data types and continue to develop the layers at the bottom. In the other approach, which is bottom to top, this is useful when you already have some functionality which is developed, and maybe at some point you need to expose this functionality as a service. So you already have data access layer and business layer working fine. So on top of the business layer, you develop your service layer, and based on the functionality that you want to expose, you can make up your contract interface and types and expose that functionality. We will focus on these 2 points. In fact, this point here, like in contract first approach, if we have a Visual or XSD type, what are the options in .NET or Visual Studio that we can generate our interfaces and data types from Visual or XSD? Okay, in Visual Studio, there is a tool which is SVC Util. This tool can be helpful. There is another tool which is XSD, and there is Visual tool as well. This XSD tool is helpful if we have some schema and we want to make .NET type out of the schema, or other way, like if we have a .NET type and we want to make XML schema out of it. This can also be used if we have XML and we want to generate schema based on that XML. This Visual.exe is helpful for the basic HTTP kind of services like ASMX services. So we have a Visual. From the Visual, we want to generate the client side types, and with the introduction of WCF, Microsoft has introduced this SVC Util tool. SVC Util tool is again helpful when we have a service, and based on the service metadata, which is WCF and XSD, we want to generate the client side classes. All these tools can be accessed from the Visual Studio command prompt. So this is my Visual Studio command prompt tool. So SVC Util, and if you want to see what it can do, we can see itself. So SVC Util, we can provide a service endpoint and it can generate the client side code from the service endpoints. And if we have Visual and XSD document and we want to generate client side code like proxy classes and data types, then we can provide Visual and XSD documents and can mention which language we want to use for the code to be generated. And if these are again client side options, like we provide something related to the service, so service should already exist, or these contracts of the service Visual and XSD type should already exist, and we can generate client side stuff from this. But now imagine if we have developed a schema or types that we want to expose our web service, and when we actually go to develop our web services, we need to have interfaces with certain attributes like operation contract on the methods and service contract on the interface, and then the complex types should be should be defined as CLR types as well, and attributes like member, data member kind of attributes should be put on those types. So this code can be generated using this option like svcutil/dc only. DC means data contract only, and we can specify our XSD. So if we have XSD or the types that we want to expose from through our service, we can generate our C# data contract classes from the XSD if we have. But this option is not really generic. We can develop XSD schemas using different tools, and there are some differences based on how we develop these different XSD schemas. And this svcutil with XSD option is quite strict. It wants the schema in its own way, so it would give many errors. For example, let's have a look at this schema. I have this schema, so it's a very simple schema. So it's a print data, and the type is print data simple, and within this type I have a complex type which is sequence of job ID and mail merge data simple, and mail merge data simple is again of type mail merge data simple, and that type is defined here, which consists of record ID and data record. Okay, it's very simple schema. So let's try to generate data contract from this schema. So we go to the tool and we can specify svcutil, and then we need to specify the data XSD path, and XSD path is print data simple.xsd, and then we say DC only. So you see there is an error type in namespace. So first of all, it expects namespaces cannot be imported from the element job ID and qualified and blah blah blah. So it doesn't like this schema. So we need to provide the target namespace and some more attributes in here. So I have in this schema, so we can copy from here. So the first thing we need to say is we need to provide target namespace and these element from default, and then also all the complex types, these are mentioned. For example, if within this element there is a complex type, so we need to fully qualify this complex type. So we provide this TNS namespace when we mention the type, and similarly we mention the type here. So we say TNS namespace, and we mention the type here as well. So we have to mention all the elements with fully qualified namespace path, and we have to provide this target namespace element from default as well. So let's try now. So it's svcutil my print data simple.xsd and DC only. So now it has generated this file. So by making these changes, we are able to generate our data contract file at this path. So let's check campuri.org. So let me open this file and we can have a look at it. Yes, so we can see the file generated print data simple, and it has these attributes and properties. Okay, but we see the problem here is, first of all, the schema is quite kind of strict. It needs the schema in its own way, so there are certain restrictions and this was one example that I showed you. If say I make some changes to this schema, view code, and over here we mention element type mail merge simple. There is an element job ID, then mail merge data simple, and its type is this, and minimum occurrence is 1, and say maximum occurrence I say unbound. So it's should be unbounded. Okay, so say I want this as a collection from where minimum occurrence is 1 and maximum occurrence is n times, and let's see if I try to do so you see there is another error. So there are, as you move on, you will find many conflicts and many things that you need to fix within your schema to make this option work. Okay, now we talk about the other options, like you can generate, if you have XSD, you can generate classes from that XSD, .NET classes. But again, if you use XSD tool is not aware of the WCF attributes that we need to put on the on these types. For example, if we go to a standard service and if we have a composite type here, we need to have these attributes. We need to decorate these member variables with data member and class with data contract attributes. So XSD is not aware of these things. It might put some attributes related to XML serialization, which is not the default serialization in the WCF. In WCF, it's the data contract serialization. So again, this option is not fully compatible, and WSTL tool deals with the WSTL, ASMX or basic HTTP web services, not the other bindings. And SVC util also has its limitation. So there is no, I did not find an option from these tools where I can work fully I mean with all the best options to go with this approach with contract first. Like I develop my WSDL and XSD, and then based on these WSDL and XSD I develop .NET interfaces and data contracts. Then I did some search on web, and I found a tool which is quite good and is helpful, and this tool is WSCF.blue. And if we search at the web, yeah, it's you will find it on the codeplex.com. so it's codeplex.com. You can download this tool. It's an add-in. This add-in will be installed into Visual Studio, so you can open. It's an MSI file. You run the setup and it will install the add-in onto your machine. I already have this add-in installed on my machine. Once you install it, you can go to add-in manager and can expose on the command line and start up. And once it is installed and available, then you just add your schemas into your project. For example, this is the default wizard generated WCF service in .NET Visual Studio 2010, and by default we know it generates a iService interface with two methods. This method was added by me, so let me comment it. So it's get data and get data with composite type, and it defines composite type as a composite type here with all these data contract and data member attributes. And when we run this service, it launches the WCF test client, and we can see these methods and invoke these methods. So these are the methods, get data and get data contract, and we can invoke these methods. Now imagine if we have schema first and we want to develop these types data contracts based on those schemas. So we already installed the add-in. We will just make our schema available, or we will add our schema file into that project, and when we right click we get this option WSCF.blue, and in here there is an option called generate data contract. So we see this dialog, and in here we can select some of the options. So if we just go default and we say okay, this is the namespace to be generated, I have used the same namespace, which is WCF service library 1, and then I have said the target file name is the same as the schema file name but with a different extension. So schema file name is printdata.xsd and file name is printdata.ccs. If it exists, override. So generate this file, and now here is the file. So it is kind of pair XSD and it's C# file, and here is the code. So it has generated job ID, mail merge data, and then mail merge data is record ID and array of bytes. Now we have these types. So to expose these types onto web service, we just add a new method which is operation contract, and we say get print data, and it returns the print data, and this print data is what we just generated through this add-in. Okay, and now we need to implement this method, and I think I already have the implementation. Yes, so I say get print data, and I just instantiate a new print data object, assign job ID, then I instantiate mail merge data, and I say record, which is list of byte, array of bytes. I put 3 bytes in it, and record ID is 1. So now I run this service again, and I should have this new method available. So here is get print data. If I invoke this service, this method, I should get those. So yes, I set the job ID 12 and these bytes as byte array and record ID. So this way, using this add-in, which is wscf.glue, we can develop our data contract classes C# or CLR types from our XSD, and similarly if we have some XSD, we can develop, if we have WSDL interface, we can, okay, so this option is create WSDL interface description, so we can generate our WSDL interface description as well from here. For example, if we go here, there is a wizard, and we can give service name, say service 1 namespace is service 1 namespace. Okay, so this is the type that we want to expose. So we can add as many XSD types in here, and then based on those, if we can add then methods to it, so we can add operations. So this option is to generate the WSDL if we want to have the WSDL first. But if we already have a WSDL and we want to generate our interfaces, then I did not find any tool which is helpful. Maybe there are some tools on the internet, but I did not explore much. So that is area where somebody need to explore and find out. So in this video, my point was only to discover these options where we can make our data contract based on our XSD. So we discussed two options. One is to use svcutil, and we found some limitations in that tool, and it's not that generic. It doesn't work for all kind of schemas. The other option which works well is the WSCF Glue, which is available as an add-in into Visual Studio. And to use that, we just make our XSD schema, and when we right click on the XSD schema, and we say generate data contract, and we can choose these options which one suits us. For example, if you want to have public properties, I do not select. So if this one is with the public properties, this will generate public properties here as well, and then you can generate the file and then make use of that file.